What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer, joined by Mike Gallagher. We've got a 10-game slate on our hands, but it honestly feels like the biggest injury slate we've had of the year. And that's saying something because we've had 15-game slates, we've had 13-game slates, but this one feels a little bit more intense. Mike, how are you on this Wednesday afternoon for me, morning for you?
Doing good. Yeah, it's total chaos. And it's not just injuries to players, it's key all-star players out. So yeah, the magnitude of this injury slate, like you said, is got to be the most impactful of the season. So yeah, just a bunch of guys that we're not used to projecting. We're giving them minutes. We're looking at players playing new positions. It's been a hectic morning. I'm still in my hiking shirt this morning. Haven't left my desk. Yeah, it's going to be a some edge to be had, I think. So hopefully we can make some money.
Yeah, it's a situation where a lot of these teams are going to be without star players, some teams multiple star players, and you're just trying to piece together what from relatively small samples how things will look, which is always a little bit tricky. But let's start with some of the big leads today. The first and foremost, the back-to-back MVP will not be available tonight. Nikola Jokic is in health and safety protocols. They're also without Bones Highland and Ish Smith. Aaron Gordon also got a questionable tag here, so they're possibly down a whole lot of depth. They're getting the Knicks on the second night of a back-to-back after the Knicks had a nice win in Utah last night. What are your thoughts on how things look for Denver tonight against the Knicks?
So my first thought is Mike Malone has talked so much about playing Zeke Naji and not having an opportunity because he is so sold on the chemistry built from Bruce Brown, Jeff Green, and DeAndre Jordan from her time in Brooklyn. It's almost to a fault. So I think Zeke Naji starts. Obviously, a guy going from third string and not playing at all to starting is quite a take, but uh, he likes that second unit together in a significant way. I think you're adding spacing. They like him as a five a lot. Malone has said as much that he's going to play the fives, and he has to suck it up. So Najee was earning minutes, hurt his ankle at really the first time he got an opportunity. Another opportunity here. So I'm expecting Zeke Najee to pick up minutes. Certainly DeAndre Jordan. I think if Bones does play, getting elevated from out to doubtful, I think that makes it even more likely because Malone has said ad nauseum he likes the foundation of their offense to in the second unit to be Bones running pick and roll with DeAndre Jordan. You add that component, and then you add MPJ coming off probably the best game he's had since he returned from injury. Really good defense, scores 31. He's probably looking at big minutes. He helped in rotation. He was like protecting the basket. We'll see if he's a factor, maybe filling some big minutes. Aaron Gordon got the tag yesterday. We've seen him play through a lot of illnesses day of. So you would think, given the circumstance here, that he is going to really try to suit up. He'd have to be feeling really bad not to play. So, yeah, this Denver team is in pretty bad shape. We've seen Jamal Murray's minutes come up in a matchup where they're going to bleed threes against the Knicks. So, yeah, it's all hands on deck here. I would expect to see maybe some Jeff Green center minutes. We saw that at times too. But yeah, it's taking away Jokic is obviously a big deal.
Yeah, and I think it's a situation where we can make assumptions on what the starting lineup will be, but I think the projections could change a lot based on if we get a surprise starting lineup. And as you referred to, it's Zeke Naji. If they decided to keep Jeff Green and DeAndre Jordan in the second unit together, maybe Zeke slides into the starting lineup. If they're without Aaron Gordon, maybe that shakes things up further in terms of how they have to do things. So it's really a mess here. And the one thing that I will say is, I think it's pretty unlikely that Bruce Brown slides into the starting lineup tonight, even if they're without Aaron Gordon. And I know he's been the utility piece that they've used in a lot of different ways and been basically like that sixth starter, but they are so thin at backup guard spots without Ish, without Bones Highland, that I think they need to keep him there as essentially the second unit point guard that can overlap some with Jamal Murray. But I think starting the game that way would really put a crimp in the rotation. So I think your likely starters here, if Aaron Gordon were out, I think it's possible that you get that Jeff Green and DeAndre Jordan combination sliding into the starting lineup together. And I think that's probably the most likely scenario, but it could get pretty thin here now. They're comfortable playing Devon Reed. They're comfortable playing Vlatko Konkar. So they have guys that they have bodies. It's not a situation where they're thin bodies, but it is a situation that we could see like a pretty tight 9-man rotation tonight from Mike Malone and company. And obviously a lot of usage available in the absence of Nikola Jokic. For what it's worth, in the very, very small sample this year, Michael Porter Jr.'s fantasy production has actually been down without Jokic on the floor, and Jamal Murray's has been way up. For what it's worth, it's a pretty small sample of things. If you go out multiple years, it gets a little bit tricky because one year Michael Porter Jr. was healthy and Jamal wasn't. And so his data looks pretty good in that year. It's kind of a messy situation to figure out. All right.
And yeah, just
That's
to add to with the MPJ thing that was interesting, he got his stuff stolen in Indiana, and then he had that really, really bad game where he got benched. And it's just crazy how there's just everything's going on with this team, which is a ridiculous situation to cover. Just wanted to add that.
Other big notable missing pieces tonight. Let's go to Miami, where Tyler Hero was already ruled out. They're playing in Toronto. They're also without Omer Yersevin, who's going to be out for weeks, Victor Oladipo, and then didn't think it was going to be a big deal, but Udonis Haslem was listed out for personal reasons, and Bam Adebayo got ruled out, and they have Dwayne Dedmon questionable on the injury report. So there's a chance that they go into this game against Toronto where they don't have any true centers. The only guy that we've seen play center for them, and it was in the preseason mostly, is Nikola Jovic, the first round pick. So we might be trading one Nikola Jokic for one Nikola Jovic tonight. We'll see if that's the case. But they are really thin here, and this is a team that we've seen play really tight rotations, right? We saw the 8-man rotation against Phoenix. Now you're taking out Bam from that. Maybe you slide Dedmon into the starting lineup. Maybe Jovic kind of comes in as the backup center. Maybe they try to steal some minutes with Haywood Highsmith at some point. But this is a pretty thin team. How do you expect them to respond against Toronto tonight without these key pieces at center?
Yeah, I think if Dedmon's playing, he kind of has to start. Toronto really likes to attack the basket. They're going to need the rim protection. Obviously, massive foul risk because I think that Nick Nurse knows that, and they'll be really going at Dedmon just because there's, like, as you said, like nobody else behind him. Jovic has been playing center because he's tall at times, certainly not a rim protector. So I would expect him to pick up a pretty good chunk of minutes. And then maybe Toronto is so big, 2 through 4, but they're not really that big at the 5. We talk about Boucher, but Boucher doesn't really play big. So it's certainly a spot where I think you could get away going smaller. Maybe they run some crazy Caleb/Jimmy at the 5 stuff just to bring in some other talent and really up Gabe Vincent minutes. They put Gabe Vincent and Kyle Lowry on 4s all the time. So, it's really just covering up the center spot with the small guys because, again, Strus has covered 4s. We've seen just their entire roster could cover 4s. It's just covering the big men. And Jimmy and I think Caleb could be up to the task. So, yeah, it could be really crazy if Dedmon's out. Plantar fasciitis, certainly an injury you don't want to push too hard. It's one that you need time to recover from. So, just total. Bam just goes off in the last game, and just unfortunately comes out and misses the next one.
Yeah, and Dwayne Dedmon is a player because of foul rates, because of his own health issues, has struggled to maintain a lot of minutes. But look, if there was ever a spot for the minutes to potentially get high, it's the spot where they're really, really limited in terms of their depth here. So it's one to pay attention to. While we're on this game, I figure we should just tackle the Toronto side of the equation as well, because they're without Pascal Siakam, but they also have Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent listed questionable once again. We saw them play without both of those guys last game against Detroit. They got a win there where Delano Banton really showed up in a big way in the starting lineup, was super, super successful. They were playing all dudes basically in the starting lineup who were like 6'7" to 6'9". It was just like modern basketball kind of like epitomized. We saw OG Anunoby have a huge jump in usage. We saw a really disappointing performance from Scotty Barnes. Do you have any inkling on whether Gary Trent Jr. or Fred VanVleet are available tonight? And if not, do you expect to see a similar rotation to what we saw in Detroit?
I mean, you got to think VanVleet's back, right? He's been listed since Saturday with this illness. He's had, the better part of a week to get healthy. They're shorthanded. I would think he's more likely to play. Gary Trent, not as positive on. Didn't get too much hint from Nurse in the post game, so probably going to be game time. And I mean, with the way Banton played, I think he may have earned a starting spot. Should add Otto Porter also out with a toe injury. He's going to miss some time. So I think they like Banton. They don't really play him on ball to bring up the offense. It's really been Scotty and really a litany of other guys. They like him as kind of a wing player. So I think Banton's minutes, if one of the two guys sits, I think he's carved out a nice little role. I think Thad is in a really good spot. Thad's been playing really well. Nurse loves him. obviously you don't need the center depth without Bam now. So I think they're very comfortable playing Thad. We saw Thad get low 30s, mid 30s minutes a couple games ago. So I think he's in a really good spot without Pascal and Precious. So expect him to benefit fairly significant. And yeah, Scotty Barnes is slumping. And Nick Nurse really talked about that after the game. Said he doesn't really have that same enthusiasm. Said he's not a kid at a candy store like he was last year, was the quote that was really fun. But yeah, struggling to get into the paint, struggling to just generate his own offense, which was really where he excelled. He was like 80% at the rim after the break last year. So a sophomore slump for Scotty, very alliterative, but expecting him to eventually get it going. But yeah, really concerning quotes from Nurse after last game.
So walk through me the starters. Let's say Van Vliet and Trent are both in. You would have those two along with Barnes and Anunoby. The fifth starter in that case, do you think is still Thaddeus Young if they're both
I think
in?
so.
Okay.
Yeah, they're very comfortable with him. They like his, interior presence. He's really switchable. They kind of lean into that style, so I think they like him there. We've seen them go with Koloko prior to this new stretch without Precious and Siakam, but I think that has. I mean, he just gets glowing reviews from Nurse after every single game, and talked about him being, a little bit out of shape, and they're still pushing him pretty good minutes. So I'd feel pretty confident there.
Okay. And then if one of Van Vliet or Trent are unavailable, you mentioned Banton would start.
Hmm.
In the rare scenario that both are unavailable, who do you think slides into what would be, in this case, Otto Porter Jr.'s starting role that would then be up for grabs based on what we saw last game? Who do you think slides in there?
So they'd need more perimeter stuff. So I think no, they like Boucher. I think they put Boucher in there. No, they'd probably start Wancho actually.
Okay.
Get a little bit more spacing against the Miami team. He'd probably get a short stint, but I think that makes sense. That way you can keep the Boucher off the bench to sub in if anything goes wrong in the front court. That's kind of what Nurse likes, and Koloko kind of the same thing. We've kind of seen that substitution pattern since the preseason, that those two bigs, whether it was Koloko Precious, Boucher Precious, whatever that combo, they come in together and really just cover things up in the second unit. So I think that makes sense to start Wancho if all three are out.
Okay. On to Boston, where they're still without Malcolm Brogdon. He got a questionable tag. Any questionable tag on Malcolm Brogdon with hamstring, I feel after last year, is very questionable. Thankfully, we got pretty good reporting early on that it was closer to doubtful and seems unlikely to play tonight at all. And then Marcus Smart was ruled out shortly thereafter. And we know with Boston, they are willing to play very tight and a lot of minutes for their main guys. And so when you take out Brogdon, you take out Marcus Smart, it opens up the door for more minutes for sure for the starters. What do you think? How do you think Boston tries to replace the lack of point guard depth tonight?
Yeah, we've seen Derek White get point guard starts when they were missing Marcus Smart for the 3 playoff games last year. He actually got 41 minutes in one of those games against Miami, had foul trouble in the other two, 28 and 29. So expecting him to get pretty solid minutes. They certainly don't need the ball handling. Jason Tatum's been bringing the ball up a ton. Brown does sometimes. So, using Derek White in a matchup where you need a perimeter defender in arguably the worst way against Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, feel very confident in Derek White's minutes. We've seen Peyton Pritchard pick up, call it 60% of Malcolm Brogdon's minutes since he went down. So he's certainly a guy that would benefit. We've seen him play pretty good amount of minutes, would definitely be out there in the non-Trae minutes. I think there's some chance that he may not get too much overlap, but they just need the ball handling and spacing and just depth there. And they trust him. We've seen, again, just getting kind of key minutes the last couple games. We've seen Peyton Pritchard sort of gain the trust of Joe Mazzulla. So those guys benefit. And then they're going to have to fill more minutes with Sam Hauser. Maybe they bring in some of these centers they've been playing and run them up behind Grant Williams. Grant Williams, as you pointed out in our Slack, played 45 minutes a couple of games ago when they didn't have Horford and Jaylen Brown. So he'll be playing a ton. We know Tatum's going to play a bunch. I like this matchup for him. He's my cover boy. National TV spot, so longer commercial breaks. Could see like 42 plus minutes or something out of the Jays. Not as confident in Jaylen Brown. Had a knee rehab management when he did miss that game in the back-to-back. So I feel way more comfortable in Tatum, who just handles the ball a lot too. So Tatum's in just a massive, massive spot today.
Yeah, I think the takeaway that I would note is we did a lot of work looking at this, and last year there were 11 games that Marcus Smart didn't play, and it's not exactly the same situation, right? But they didn't have Brogdon last year, so it's somewhat similar. And for Peyton Pritchard specifically, in each of those 11 games, or most of them, I should say, not each, but most of them, he was technically behind another guard on the depth chart, Derek White or Dennis Schroeder, before they acquired Derek White. And Dennis Schroeder in those games, I think Schroeder played like 7 of them. He averaged 34 minutes a game. In the 2 games that Derek White played, he averaged 34 minutes per game. And then in the 11 games that Pritchard played, he averaged 19 minutes per game. So I think a lot of people are going to get really excited about Peyton Pritchard. I don't expect him to start. I think the minutes range on Peyton Pritchard is probably more like 20 to 28 tonight. I would be surprised if he touched 30. I would be surprised if he was like held to 16 or something like that. But just to note, he hasn't benefited in quite the way that I think people are going to expect, given the lack of point guard depth. And as you alluded to specifically, this matchup really requires point guard on-ball defense. And I think they're more comfortable not only with Derek White in that role, but even with like the switchability of Grant Williams and Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and those guys. So I think the main 5 starters, White, Brown, Tatum, Williams, Horford, I think are going to play a ton tonight. I think you could see a couple guys get into 38 plus territory. Would not surprise me at all if it's like 3 or 4 of those guys in that territory. And then they piece it together with Hauser, with Luke Cornett. Pritchard's role is going to be secure as like the 6th, 7th guy off the bench, but there's a chance that if they play the starters a ton, the minutes for Pritchard get capped a bit. So just be aware of that.
Should add, Derek White had a 17-minute rotation in the last game when SGA was just smashing all over them. So very comfortable playing him big minutes.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go to the latest news we got right before we came on, which, look, we got the quotes yesterday after the close win from Dallas that, Jason Kidd said he's basically going to play everyone that's available. And the big elephant in the room was, well, who's going to be available? And we got some information with no Luka Doncic, no Maxi Kleber, no JaVale McGee for the second night of a back-to-back. It's going to be a lot of opportunity for Spencer Dinwiddie and Christian Wood, certainly, to take over usage in the absence of Luka Doncic. There's not really a good way to fill Luka Doncic's role, but how do you expect the Mavs to try to do so tonight?
Jason Kidd is using the whole roster today. It is full on. What is it? A leadership council was the thing last year.
Exactly.
They played everyone.
That was it.
So the leadership council is back in session. He had mentioned Frank Ntilikina and Facu Campazzo in order as guys who are going to play. They are certainly going to be in their rotation today. Would expect Theo Pinson to come in there. I would be nervous on Dinwiddie's minutes just a little bit. I wouldn't project him like full because there were some quotes from him as well saying that he can't play him this much. You see the 41 minutes. He's been playing a ton. Yeah. So I think he's not going to have a lot of ball handling either. He said they only have 1 ball handler right now with Luka. So I think that his role, as crazy as it sounds, obviously the usage will be elevated, but I think his role will be, similar to what it's been because they're running him into the ground too with this how much they're asking of him to do really on the offensive end as of late. So, but it's going to be, we are going to project this whole team. I know the guys started on you and I'll look after this, but just expect everyone to play. I probably think Frank starts. It might be Josh Green too. Josh Green's minutes have kind of come back down as Reggie Bullock has brought himself back to life. Big game from him last night, by the way, with some clutch shots. But it's going to be a mess. Obviously, without Kleba, we'll see Dwight Powell have a little bit more of a minute ceiling. But maybe they play Christian Wood more. Christian Wood had that knee injury back-to-back. Probably won't elevate him too much. It's just going to be just gross.
This does feel like a game to me where they let Christian Wood pile up numbers.
Revenge game.
Well, I just think they're going to manage Dinwiddie to some extent, right? And so, like, the other way to get through this is Hardaway and Christian Wood, who haven't played as much, maybe leaning on them a little bit more. It's a shaky spot because obviously you want to attack, right? This is a great matchup to attack, but I think you could get something akin to preseason type rotations where the minutes are really, really managed on guys. So it's going to be a really interesting spot to keep an eye on. And as you noted, like they're just kind of running these guys into the ground in terms of Luka, in terms of Dinwiddie. I mean, 40 plus minutes for these guys. That third quarter last night was really costly because they had this game in control. They come out, they play a terrible third quarter, get outscored by 18 points. All of a sudden, it's a game again. They have to play their guys major minutes in the fourth quarter, and now they're not. And now a couple of them are not available tonight. So,
And
yeah,
I'm curious if they bring Hardy back. I don't. I'll have to look at that one before we do it to see where the
yeah,
G League team was. But I mean, they might bring him in there and play him. Might even start him.
yeah,
Really, it's
yeah,
just. Yeah, I've got to think through it more. It just happened before we hopped on. But
yeah.
he did mention that Frank Ntilikina and Campazzo are the guys he's expecting to step up the most.
All right, more star players that are out tonight. Paolo Banchero, this ankle injury continues to linger, and he's been ruled out early the last few games.
Mhm.
After the first time out, it was kind of like a questionable all day, and then ruled out. So it seems like we're getting further away from him playing, which is strange. We also have Wendell Carter Jr. with a questionable tag with the old plantar fasciitis, which is a concern for sure. We've seen
Mhm.
that linger for guys, and the only real uh, solution is rest. What are your thoughts
Mhm.
on? We've seen a lot of the Magic without Paolo of late. Obviously, we've seen Franz Wagner and Jalen Suggs and Wendell Carter Jr. all kind of pick up usage there. We saw Bol have a better game last time from a usage perspective, and we've seen Chumo Okeke slide into the starting lineup and play quite a bit. But if they're down without Wendell Carter Jr. as well, is it as simple as they're just straight swapping Mo Bamba into the center spot for those minutes?
I think so. We've seen Bamba kind of come back to life here, so I'd expect him to pick up, a pretty good role. Not a lot, maybe they slot Bull. They need a size. I mean, they're going against the Wolves, so I think they would go jumbo. We haven't seen too much. I have to dig more into that of the Bamba Bull stuff, so expect them to benefit. Should add Chumo KK has been the linchpin of their defense. They've been putting him on LaMelo. They put him on Booker. Minutes have been pretty good. We saw the Magic have a really bad start to the third quarter, straight hockey subbed the
Yep.
whole first unit. So that's something to keep in mind. The bench responded pretty well. So I would expect all those bench guys to probably be in the mix, especially if Wendell Carter Jr. doesn't play. But yeah, I think it makes sense to elevate Bamba, maybe stagger him a little bit, bring in Schofield. That way you have kind of a clean 10 man there. But yeah, I think Choma's minutes are going to be really solid against a team that just bleeds off ball scoring, 3-pointers. So it could be a lot of wide open threes for him. And, maybe Bamba as well. Bamba, we've seen him bomb the threes at times. So interesting matchups. And I want to bet the Wolves in this one. I'm not allowed to. I just can't do it. I have to watch this game. I just can't do it.
You did note a couple things working in the favor of Mo Bamba potentially sliding in the starting lineup if it is Wendell Carter Jr. who's unavailable to play. One being the size of Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert in that starting lineup. Because I do think that if it was against a smaller opponent, they'd strongly consider keeping Bamba staggered off into the second
Mhm.
unit. And because I don't know how comfortable they are really letting his minutes go. Um, that's my one concern around Mo Bamba. But the good news is it's a 7 o'clock Eastern game. So if Wendell Carter Jr. was out, we would likely get a starting lineup in advance and we'd have a clearer indication. But I do think generally, if they're playing without Wendell Carter Jr., they'd like to stagger Bull and Bamba a little bit more because there's nothing else behind them in terms of rim protection, in terms of big man depth. Jonathan Isaac is still, unavailable. So
And no, Mo Wagner also still out too. So
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
they're thin. And I think that we've seen a lot of people really started by Ty Lue bringing in power forwards and even smallerish power
Yeah.
forwards to guard Cat. So I wouldn't be surprised if they start Schofield
Yeah, I
and just
think
like
I,
throw him to the Wolves or something like that.
I think it would be Caleb Houston before Schofield in
Mhm.
in that iteration, but yeah, I think it could be something like that too. But we would
Yeah.
know
And they could
is
put they'd probably put Chuma on him. I think
right,
they really trust
right.
Chuma to just do
Yeah,
anything. So
yeah. Okay, other questionable tags to work through. Tyrese Halliburton is questionable with an ankle issue. Given my previous comments on Malcolm Brogdon and the questionable tag for the Pacers last year, I always get a little nervous whenever there's a questionable tag for the Pacers. What are your thoughts on Tyrese Halliburton's availability tonight?
Looking pretty good. Not really much concern after tweaking it in the last game. Did go through some practice work. So yeah, as you said, it's dicey. A team that's not very good. They're playing a lot better lately. Their defense, especially thanks
Yeah,
to Andrew Nembhard, who's been really good. But yeah, I feel okay. I don't feel great. It's an ankle injury. I thought Powell was going to play every game, and he has not.
yeah,
But yeah, and that injury looked worse. Worse. I'm sorry, better than this one Halliburton had, but different situation. So I think he plays. If he doesn't, Obviously, TJ McConnell season, a guy that's capable of running the offense. I think he slides in there. Certainly more minutes for Andrew Nebhard. More minutes for Ben Mathurin. And Aaron Nesmith has been healthy, picking up some minutes on the wing there. So they've kind of got the depth there in a matchup that's just really good for Miles Turner. I think Miles Turner could just completely smash on the Hornets here.
I do wonder who they would go to the starting lineup, because McConnell is the clear backup, right? But Nembhard is really a point guard that they've been playing at shooting guard essentially because they've liked his defense. They've liked him as a secondary ball handler. I could see them just as easily slide Benny Mathurin into the starting lineup over a McConnell, or slide Nesmith into the starting lineup, who was starting earlier, and keep McConnell and Mathurin together off the bench. I think there's a lot of different ways this could go. Another one that's fortunately an early night game. So if we did miss Halliburton tonight, we would probably have a clear indication of the lineup and understand how the rotation could work there. One other out tag that also happened right before the show that we got on that I forgot to cover: Zion Williamson has been ruled out for New Orleans. We saw this situation last night. They're on the second night of a back-to-back playing the Bulls tonight. Any notes from last night's game, or intrigue or takeaways that you have for how the rotation might be impacted tonight without Zion again?
We did see in the last game they played them last week, and it was one of Valanciunas' best games after having one of his worst games last night. Only getting 14 minutes in a game when you don't have Zion Williamson like that, and when Steven Adams wasn't really out there too much. Just like, oh my god,
It was
just
incredible that
red alert.
both Adams and Valanciunas got into foul trouble, and it became a game for Brandon Clark and Larry Nance. And I mean, if you like line up the two bigs on each of those teams, like very clearly, if Adams or Joval had gotten going and out of foul trouble, those guys probably match up with each other a lot, because I don't think either team wants the one guy against the other. And then Nance and Clark are like clear matchups to match up a lot. So I think it was a pretty perfect run out for Larry Nance and Brandon Clark last night. The Bulls situation is a little bit different with their depth at big man, right? It's not just Vucevic as the starter; it's Andre Drummond in the backup unit as well. So I'm with you there that I could see a bounce back spot for Joval tonight too.
Yeah, I think he went 23, 14, and 2, if I remember something along those lines. But yeah, we did see Herb foul trouble, so that got Najee Marshall elevated a little bit. I think they played right behind each other. That's kind of
They
how they
did. It
viewed
was
it.
straight subs.
More of it,
Yeah.
more of his like an understudy situation. So expecting Herb to pick up the DeMar DeRozan matchup. DeMar actually lit him up for 33 or 34 in the last game, so was able to take advantage there. But yeah, Trey Murphy's minutes weren't all that high. We've seen Alvarado pick up some big minutes. CJ McCollum mentioned this on the last injury show yesterday that he was feeling ill, according to him and Willie Green. Said after the game he's been playing like S, and he felt like S, and he felt better. Big usage, really took advantage of this matchup with Dylan Brooks picking up the wing stuff with Ingram. So expecting him to play pretty well. A guy who's normally, I haven't researched this in a while, but he's typically been a guy who responds very well in back-to-back games.
All right. Other questionable tags, we have a lot on Cleveland. Well, just one on Cleveland. A couple other injury notes on Cleveland, though. Jared Allen is out for Cleveland. Dean Wade is listed as doubtful. And then Donovan Mitchell is listed as questionable. There are reports from our good friends over at Underdog Fantasy that Mitchell went through shoot-around this morning, so it seems positive there. But big matchup tonight against Milwaukee. In that, on Milwaukee's side, Drew Holiday is questionable, and they're still without Chris Middleton. They're going to get Pat Connaughton back. But this is like the premier game of the night that everybody's really excited about. And unfortunately, we're not going to be at full strength. How do the Cavs respond without Jared Allen? And if they were to miss Donovan Mitchell, how do you think they'd react?
I think Donovan's playing, as you said. It was never really too much concern that it was more of a one-game thing, so he should be back after a couple of days off there. Matchup, really important here, right? I mean, you're going to probably put Mobley on Giannis. Do you want to have Kevin Love behind him? I don't know. I think they're going to start him, but I won't be surprised if they go Lopez on Lopez there. But we do have to respect that they went that way last time. So expecting Love, Mobley, and then Mitchell coming back and LeVert still starting. We saw Lamar Steve just not having Dean Wade just really disrupts how this rotation can go. If they had Wade, it would have been fine. You could have started Mobley and Wade together, no question. So yeah, a lot of factors at work here, but expecting those guys to fill most of those minutes. I expect a pretty good amount of Robin Lopez off the bench.
Yeah, and one of the challenges as well is the floor spacing. No Dean
Mhm.
Wade, he's generally a floor spacer for them, and that requires sort of Kevin Love to be in that starting lineup to give them a little bit more floor spacing. So I think that's going to be the approach as well
Mhm.
tonight. On the Milwaukee side of things, Pat Connaughton has been upgraded to probable, so it sounds like we'll see
Mhm.
his season debut tonight. Grayson Allen is doubtful there, so they might be just swapping one wing for another in
Mhm.
terms of their availability. And Drew Holiday is questionable. We've seen this Bucks team losers of 2 straight, the Cavs losers of 4 straight, battle through some injuries here. What are your thoughts on Drew's availability tonight and how the return of Pat Connaughton impacts things?
Yeah, Drew and Powell, pretty similar with I think they got hurt one day apart, maybe even the same day. They both returned from their injury and looked fine. And Drew, I think Drew's got a pretty good chance to return here. We'll see what kind of minutes he gets, but yeah, you're basically slotting Grayson minutes for Connaughton. I think they feel very comfortable starting Moshe Beauchamp. He's been excellent. Talked up a lot after the game from Mike Budenholzer, saying it's good to be young, brings a lot of energy and life to that first unit with some off-ball stuff and
Yeah.
defense. So I think Beauchamp's got himself a starting spot now that they've lost Grayson, and as they kind of ramp up Connaughton here. So yeah, I would expect the starters to be Drew, Beauchamp, Javon Carter, Giannis, who I should mention tweaked his ankle in the last game. He's okay, not an injury report, but it's the Bucks, so be careful.
Yep.
And Brooke Lopez.
Yeah, it's got to be nice for them because obviously after the Drew Holiday trade, they just didn't have first round picks, so they didn't really have ways to infuse any youth into the roster. And now with Beauchamp, they have some young pieces, and so Budenholzer's got to enjoy having that kind of youth and energy to infuse in the starting lineup here. Unfortunate, that's a game that I was like circled on my calendar in terms of Bucks, Cavs. I think these are two of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. Anytime these Bucks, Cavs, Pistons kind of get together Philadelphia, I get excited and intrigued, and
Mhm.
unfortunately not at full health tonight. We get the question in chat if we're going to be doing another watch party for a game tonight. Not tonight, but we are looking at possible dates in the future to figure something out. And Playback is going to have some innovative options that they're going to be unveiling around Thanksgiving that we might be able to partake in as well. So we will continue to update you guys when we do more of that stuff, but nothing tonight on the schedule for that. Okay. Chris Paul, also questionable for Phoenix. He's been questionable and missing for the last 3 or 4 games, something like that. Do you think there's a chance that Chris Paul returns tonight?
Yeah, very good chance. Was going through some shoot around work. Looked to be in good spirits based on the videos that were coming out from the beat writers expecting him to come back. That obviously Bush campaigned to the bench. This starting line has been giving up points in bunches since Chris Paul went down, so they could use an injection of life there. But yeah, Chris Paul was never really it was always a day to day thing, just with heel soreness and just because he's old and they want to make sure that he's ready for the long haul. So I'd expect him to pick up not all of his usual workload, but flirting be around 30. Campaign's obviously been fine overall, taking some pressure off Devin Booker after a tough loss. A lot of chatter about lack of free throws. You see the two of four from the line when Miami to lose to Miami. So I expect Booker to be really aggressive regardless tonight against the team that has the second most free throw attempts allowed in Golden State. So I think Booker still gets a lot of minutes. National TV game could help him get boosted. So I don't think
Excited
Booker's
to
going to
watch
be
Booker
effective.
and Clay chirp at each other
Yeah,
all night. So
yeah, man, that's going to be really fun. So yeah, great nightcap there, and yeah, would have been cool to have that as the watch party game after we had that brutal LA last
yeah,
time.
unfortunately, the timing just didn't work out. I have
Yeah.
to play tennis every once in a while on these Wednesdays, given the
Oh,
commitment
got
that
to.
I
Yeah.
have made financially to
I'm going to be
playing
dead
every
too. So
Wednesdays.
yeah, yeah.
Eric notes in chat that he wants another Dink and Leone drunk special established a million for Thanksgiving. I have good news for you. That will be coming along with our Thanksgiving content schedule. I saw the guys working on it, and that will be released. I would guess.
Baby.
I would guess. I would guess Monday of next week we'll release the content schedule. But that
IPA season
that is
again.
on the docket. I have to be thoughtful on my drink of choice for that one because that was a painful large slate the next day when I was going through it. Okay, other injuries to note tonight. Doubtful or out tags. We talked about Zion. We talked about Jared Allen. Let's talk about Dennis Smith Jr. for Charlotte. He's doubtful once again. Charlotte still without Gordon Hayward. We've seen LaMelo Ball play pretty good minutes in his return. He's been less aggressive than you would expect. He's taken about 67% of his shots from three in the first
Mhm.
2 games, which is a lot. But I think that was more matchup based than anything else.
Mhm.
Orlando and Miami are 2 teams that really funnel shots to the 3-point line because of their rim protection. And so I think tonight against Indiana, it's somewhat similar in terms of Indiana has a lot of rim protection too, but they allow like the 14th most 3-point attempts. It's not quite as an
Mhm.
extreme matchup. Without DSJ tonight, is this the spot we get the LaMelo Ball breakout game and welcome to 2022?
Yeah, I think so. You mentioned all the length. Seeing a lot of Caleb Martin. I mentioned the Chumu KK stuff in the last game. Rampant. It's a lot of length against teams that don't want you in there, and the Pacers do want you in there. They want you running into Miles Turner, and I think LaMelo is really adept at that little 3 to 10 foot game hitting
Yep.
cutters. I think it's a really good spot for him. Runs into 2 quick fouls, and he still gets 34 minutes. Obviously, the conditioning should be good to go. I love LaMelo today. I almost cover Boyd him, so I'm expecting a
Nice.
lot there. Should also mention too that um, Clifford. This is down the line because we're not expecting DSJ. He said he will play DSJ with LaMelo because LaMelo is so long,
Yeah, that makes sense.
which makes a lot of sense. So
Yeah.
just something to think about when we get there.
Yeah, and we've seen them like play right. They play Lamelo and Terry Rozier together, and we've seen them play 3 guard mixes in the past. I think those 3 guys will be almost all of their guard minutes when they're fully
Mhm.
healthy, and then that can push guys more into the wing side of things. Okay, on to Oklahoma City. No Trey Mann, no Darius Baisley, no Jiang or Amorie out. What does OKC look like tonight? They've been playing pretty good basketball of late. Had a great win in the Garden, and then went back to back and played Boston really tight. What are your thoughts on OKC tonight?
Yeah, my main thought is Pokashevsky's center minutes. They have been really picking up. He plays against Al Horford, who was kind of, they were together in OKC before Horford got shut down and sent to Boston. So I expect, Poku to start here. KP, obviously a very talented big man, but he doesn't really use his size down low. He probably will against Poku today, but I expect him to be up to the challenge. We saw Jalen Williams guard Jalen Brown in the last game, and Mark Dagnall was really pleased. So I feel pretty confident that Jalen Williams gets a pretty hefty role, as we've seen Aaron Wiggins and Kenrich Williams kind of battle for their secondary ball handler. You don't need a second ball handler against this matchup. You've got Bradley Beal, you have Dort there. You don't need to put anybody besides SGA and Monty. And they have, Denny, they could just put Giddy on them. So I think it makes a lot of sense to start Jalen here, playing big minutes. You get additional ball handling when he's subbed away because they don't have Trey Mann. So I think Jalen's in a pretty good spot here in a matchup that I think is okay. So yeah, it looks to famous last words, but it looks like OKC may have the rotation mostly figured out. I think Jalen, the bad Jalen, Jay Will, I think he plays some minutes, gets some little bit of height and a little bit of rim denial against Gafford. So for the first, I feel like I've been better at the OKC takes. So ready to be disappointed today.
Yeah, we'll see. With OKC, one of the big things is in the past we've seen a willingness to let their guys that they're comfortable with go, right? Like Josh Giddey, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Lou Dort. In competitive games, those guys, the minutes have been really fine. It's all these spare parts that they have that you're sifting through that can be really frustrating to project because some nights they pop off and play 25, 26, 27. Some nights they get stuck playing 12, 13, 14. And it's really frustrating to find value. The question will ultimately be as the season goes on, can Jalen Williams, J Dub, and Alexei Pokashevsky earn their right into that type of playing time that Dort, SGA, and Giddy have earned over time? I think with the way that they're playing, that odds are suggesting that that's the direction we're heading, but I think they have not solidified that yet. So you could still see some variance and some volatility associated with it. But we see the ceiling, right? 37 minutes from Poku last game, 36 from Jalen Williams. Like that ceiling is certainly there, given the lack of the skill gap between those guys and the next bench guys, right? It's a pretty big drop off in terms of raw talent. So we'll see if they can continue to hold these gains they've made early in the season. But it's been a nice start to the season for OKC. I mean, Shai looks like he's taking another step and is being very active defensively. Poku looks way more comfortable than he has in his first 2 years. Jalen Williams looks strong right away. Like this has been a really good start to the season for Oklahoma City. Hopefully, they can continue this, because I'd like to see more stable rotations when trying to project them. Would make it a lot easier for me as well.
What did maybe your wish came true? From
Maybe.
that would be keep making more wishes.
The other probable return notes: Bradley Beal, who we've seen Washington play without Bradley Beal for a while. He's going to be back tonight, listed as probable. Generally, they have not eased him in when he's come back after long layoffs. I don't expect that to be the case once again tonight. The interesting thing will be, in his absence, Goodwin has played really, really well and sort of earned a role. Does that role stay, into what magnitude, and how do the minutes get split between guys like Corey Kispert, Denny Avdija, Goodwin, Barton, Achimura? I think it's going to be very, very hot handy in terms of who's playing well and who gets to earn those minutes. But I think that's the big question mark with Bradley Beal's return. Any other notes there for Washington?
Yeah, matchup. They put Denny on big drivey ball handlers all the time. You're getting the driviest ball handler out there. Him and Ja, I guess, are neck and neck now. So I'd expect Denny to get a pretty good run here. As you mentioned, Bradley Beal, we've seen him miss time for protocols before. Even before last weekend, Wes Unseld said he was doing okay, so it never really bothered him. So I expect him to play normal minutes or close to it. We've seen a lot of times Bradley Beal just gets thrown into the fire. Talked about last time, Giannis doesn't really do that. So I expect Beal to play a good amount of minutes. But yeah, I think Denny is the lead dog here. No pun intended with the dog. But yeah, I expect him to play a lot. And yeah, I think Goodwin definitely has carved out a role. So he'll probably be pushing aside the Anthony Gills of the world. Maybe he squeezes Barton a little bit. Maybe really Hachimura just a tad. But yeah, I expect the rotation to be pretty similar. Probably going 10, as Kispert is obviously getting pushed down in a big way.
Yeah, I think the Anthony Gill note is interesting because they also have liked him as a perimeter defender. That's the one thing that could really screw things up tonight, is if like Denny got into foul trouble or something like that, and they decided to go to Anthony Gill. We're not going to project it that way because I think he's largely out of the rotation, but that's how they have used him, is for these kind of like primary scoring guys. So something to pay attention to. But Kispert, Barton, Monty, Goodwin, all of their roles are in danger, as is Avdija, in terms of just bringing in this depth back. So beware on some of the Wizards secondary pieces. Golden State, Klay Thompson comes back. We saw Jordan Poole move into the starting lineup last game. Golden State looked like the Golden State of old. It's been a tough start to the season for Klay Thompson. There's going to be whispers about whether Klay Thompson should be in the starting lineup or not going forward. But I don't think that change is going to happen anytime soon. I think it would take a lot more time from Klay Thompson before that happens. Assume we will get Klay and Devin chirping quite a bit tonight.
Yeah, it should be fun. And a rotation note here and we actually took an under on it because JaMychal Green is going to get minutes. It was interesting to see Anthony Slater of The Athletic ask Kerr about Jordan Poole starting and how it's got him so much better shots with Steph. And he just went on his own little tangent talking about how he has to play JaMychal Green. So I expect JaMychal Green to play the second unit with what Kerr called a lot of shooting. So that means maybe Kuminga has had his chance. He's been playing okay, but I think that they really want to play JaMychal here. Certainly a spot you want to do so, maybe to help out against Ayton. But yeah, I think we've got a pretty interesting spot here. We'll see if what kind of leash Klay has. That's the game he got ejected. He got ejected, Suns, right? Yeah. So he gets his second ejection of his career.
Naz Reid also back from Minnesota. How does that impact things for them tonight?
Huge impact. No, I shouldn't even put it on there. But yeah, I don't expect to be in the rotation. They want to play those two bigs and stagger them. It's just gone so haywire. Yeah. Please tell me if I'm going to check with you and tell me not to bet it. I just can't do it.
It's just going to be wellness checks on Mike Gallagher tonight.
Yeah, right.
Making sure that he hasn't bet the Wolves. All right, that will do it. We've touched on everything. As a reminder, to support the people who are supporting us, check out the good friends over at Underdog Fantasy. This show is brought to you by UnderdogFantasy.com. They have daily NBA snake drafts for money running in addition to many formats of NFL contests, still running for huge prizes, including their playoff contests that I think are super fun on the NFL side of things. if you're playing NBA Pick'em and you're an Establish the Run in-season DFS subscriber, you have access to our Pick'em tools projection tables, which compare our projections to the Pick'em lines at Underdog, so you can take a shot at those games as well. If you are signing up for the first time, you can see there they will match your first deposit up to $100. Just use the promo code ETR at checkout, and you get that first $100 deposit matched up to $100. Promo code ETR at checkout at underdogfantasy.com. And if you're interested in supporting our content on this free side and you enjoy it, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you are interested in joining us with paid content during the course of the season, myself and Gary Hartman, Cash Game Gary, will be behind the paywall at 5 o'clock Eastern tonight. You can see more information about our packages available at establishtheRun.com. Subscribe, NBA, props, DFS. We've got you covered. If you're uninterested in a premium subscription, at least give us the clicks here. If you're not going to give us the dollars, give us the clicks. As always, hold down, press, smash, gently push the like button to help circulate this free content and have us keep producing it for you. Feed the algorithms. Feed yourselves in advance of Thanksgiving, but most importantly, feed the algorithms. Nom, 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 nom. We'll see you tomorrow with another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. Take care, everybody.